Okay guys, today is the 1 year anniversary of the Dan Forth shooting in Toronto. You can Google that and see what happened, but two people died, so a woman and a child ended up dying, and it was an Islamic attack. And again, the media in our country, in Canada, is doing everything it can to suppress the fact that it had nothing to do with Islam. So they are going to talk about how the hospitals handled the crisis, how the victims are doing, and honestly, I'm glad there wasn't any more victims than the two who died. But the ones who did survive have like so much physical therapy and readaptation to do in order to function, and they've kind of lost the life that they used to have. So when you can't walk anymore, I mean, it's kind of a big deal. So, but anyways, so I feel bad for the victims of any terrorist attack. And this is why I make these videos, because I'm trying to remind people what is behind the terrorist attack, because they are not doing their job. The government is not protecting us, and the media is not doing their job as journalists, actually reporting the facts. So it comes down to people like me who have a microphone and a camera to remind people what is really happening out there. So in light of that, today I'm going to talk to you about another article that was published in the CBC today. And it was an article that was pure propaganda with kind of some undertones of, we're not doing this while they're doing it. So it's, when you understand Islam, you know exactly what's going on. So let's check out this article really quickly, and then I'm going to go into more detail about why they're lying and how I know that this article is pure propaganda. So the title of this article, it's in the CBC, and it is called "How a Misleading YouTube Video is Stoking Fears About Sharia Law Before the Federal Election." Of course, they're not linking the video. If anybody that is watching this happens to know what which video this is, please post it down in the comment section. I would really appreciate it. It is a video by Sandra Solomon, Voices of Sandra Solomon, if you go to her YouTube channel, and I have not been able to find it. I've looked and I was not able to find it, and I would really love to actually watch the original content, because I think they are actually, they didn't link it for a reason. And it's because they want to be able to control what they say about the video without anybody being able to check up on it. So anyways, if you have that video, please post it. I'd really love to see the full video. So this is a Mufti Asim Rashid, who has a YouTube channel as well and gives lots of speeches. So here's just to show you how they talk in this article. A short, grainy YouTube video circulating on social media purports to show evidence of an imam claiming that if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is re-elected, he will institute Sharia law, the legal code of Islam based on the Quran. So I like how they say that a grainy video, like as if the videos on YouTube are like terrible. Well, yeah, people on YouTube, most people who make videos, a lot of people, they just use a camera and wherever they are, they don't have a whole crew paid by the tax dollars. So it's kind of funny, because while I pay for the CBC to post their articles and to have a whole bunch of admins and people who can help them, then the actual people really reporting the news don't get any funding at all from the taxpayers. So it's funny that the CBC would spit on the people who actually report the news and do their job for them, while they get the money, of course. So they say now this video is taken out of context, because everything to do with Islam is always taken out of context. I am so tired of hearing that argument when it comes to Islam. Anytime something bad about Islam, it's you taking it out of context. But however, all of the so-called peaceful passages, somehow they're not out of context. So it's funny how that works. It's very strange in Islam how it's always out of context. So they're saying that according to the man featured in it, it's taken out of context, and it was created by Sandra Solomon, known for her anti-Islamic views. So for any of you who don't know Sandra, I don't know her personally, but I've been following her for years. And she is a great activist. She came from a Muslim country herself. She is now in Canada. She lives, I believe, somewhere in or around Toronto. And she is doing everything she can to warn, everything she can. Oh my gosh. See, I did a full day at work, then I come home and I do these videos in my brain. She's doing everything she can to make sure that she warns us Canadians. So she's right now trying to have the Quran declared as hate book. I don't always agree with everything she does, but she's a great asset for us to have in Canada. I don't think we should personally declare the Quran as hate speech because I think, you know, we just read it and you'll know it's hate speech and you'll be able to figure out your way around it. We don't need the government to tell us. Just like I don't need the government to tell me that Mein Kampf, written by Hitler, is a bad book. I can figure that out by reading it. So anyways, she does very good work. She's very much on the ground. So you'll see Sandra in all of these, she'll be protesting in the streets with people. So she's very courageous, very brave woman, and very out there trying to warn us. So we could listen to her, but of course they didn't post a video in here, so I don't know what she said in the rest of her video. This video has about 50,000 views on YouTube, a middling amount, but has been posted on at least 3 different Facebook groups that are all critical of Trudeau. So the CBC, again, can't even sustain their own audiences, cannot even make it in the real world without stealing money from taxpayers to pretend to be a real business, is saying that a YouTube video getting 50,000 views is like a middling amount. I don't know how to pronounce that word. I had to Google it to figure out what it meant, but it means like not so great. So I love it how the CBC of all of them, you're the worst. You guys are the worst. And you are taking my money to print this. And then to say that people who do this stuff only get 50,000 views. How many views do you get, CBC? I'm pretty sure that at this point, I get more views than you do on videos that I post, and I don't disable comments. Anyways, okay, I digress. Whew. So here we go. In 3 pages, the 3 pages get a high engagement in terms of reactions, comments, and shares. This is for the 3 Facebook pages they're mentioning. And they are in some of the most popular groups spreading memes and disinformation online. So again, anything that's not within the borders of the CBC is considered to be disinformation if it doesn't go along with the narrative. So if the CBC says the sky's red and you don't say that the sky's red and you argue that the sky might be blue, you are spreading disinformation. See, that's how it works. These groups equal or often exceed many traditional media outlets. See, they admit it. That's what I just said. Okay, so the video itself includes a short section from a speech about Islam delivered. See, I nailed it this time. By Mufti Asim Rashid in Kamloops, BC in October 2017. It also features a picture of Justin Trudeau praying at a mosque. So you guys can read this article. I'm going to link it in the description below this YouTube video. But they're now telling us what's in the video. So they're saying that in a full-length recording of Rashid's speech posted on YouTube, he is critical of fears over Sharia, saying that it is a principle that underpins Islam, and there is no conspiracy among Muslims to bring Sharia to Canada. Nowhere in the video does Rashid mention Trudeau or the 2019 federal election. In fact, during the portion of the speech used in the misleading video, Rashid says he was actually referring to the former Stephen Harper Conservative government. Taken out of context, the section that Solomon excerpted appears to show that Rashid believes the Canadian government wants Sharia law. The Canadian government wanted Muslims to be able to regulate their own issues of marriage and divorce and set up systems of mediation and arbitration to solve their problems amongst themselves through Sharia law, so it's not a burden on the court system, which is already so bogged down, he said. The Canadian government wants people like myself to sign off on custody cases where there was an allegation of parental abduction, he said in the video, specifying it relates to Muslim countries who might seek the approval of Muslim clerics in such cases. So let's address this video. So first of all, Trudeau does want to bring Sharia to Canada, and in fact, he has already done it. And I'm gonna give you some examples of how he's done that. But just because the Imam doesn't specifically mention Trudeau doesn't mean Trudeau isn't doing it. It's sort of like, remember when Bill Clinton was in front of the cameras it was the 90s, and he said, I never had sexual relations with that woman. And it turns out that he did. So this is kind of the same thing, right? Like, we don't want to bring Sharia to Canada when we are bringing Sharia to Canada. It's already happening. So I'll let you read the rest of the article. It goes on and it goes on to say that the Sharia fears in Canada are unfounded, that the disinformation is normal, it's being pushed out by awful YouTube channels like mine, despite the fact that I actually give evidence. But And then they go into, of course, bashing Sandra, painting her as an Islamophobic hate mongerer. And they couldn't help themselves. They had to go in and bash Maxime Bernier. So he makes an appearance at the bottom of this article because he accused Trudeau in tweets of leaving room in his party for Muslims that want to bring Sharia. And he does the same to Andrew Scheer. And it's true. The two governments in Canada, the Conservatives and the Liberals, are actually bringing Sharia compliant politicians into their parties. So let's go through the list of how I can prove to you that Justin Trudeau is already bringing Sharia here. It's not like he might. It's already being done, folks. So first of all, he's bringing ISIS fighters back home and other ISIS fighters here to Canada so that they can have a place to land. The Justin Trudeau government is responsible for Motion M103, which is an Islamophobia bill. And by Islamophobia, they mean they want to shut down the criticism of Islam. And under Sharia, criticism of Islam means if you say anything that does not put Islam in the great light that it wants to be, if you say anything negative about it, anything negative about the Prophet Muhammad, that is considered to be blasphemy. So that is an element of Sharia. They're enforcing blasphemy censorship online, so that is related to M103. So M103 is just a motion on the books, but now they're using that to go in and censor online videos and online content that would question the practices of Islam. They are paying terrorists. So if you look at finances under Sharia, the people who go out and conduct terrorist attacks in the name of Islam, they often die. And their families are highly rewarded by the state that practices Islamic law with financial compensation. So if your son dies in a terror attack in the name of Allah and he died a martyr essentially, your family will get money for a very long time, if not for life. And this is what is happening here when they're paying terrorists. So in this case, they didn't pay the terrorist that died. The terrorist actually survived, was in jail for a while, and they brought up some bogus things about how he was not treated well in a prison, and they gave him $10 million. This is Omar Kadar. And this is an element of Sharia. See, people need to study up on Sharia so that you can recognize, or you know what, better yet, just follow my YouTube channel, come on here and get the bell thing, notification thing, so that whenever I put these videos, you're aware, because it's important. And I'm not doing this because I want views or anything. I'm truly wanting this to be out there. I want people to start recognizing Sharia. I've studied this and I want people to know what is happening to my country. This is not okay, what is happening here. Okay, let's keep going down the list. They are covering up terror attacks in the name of Islam by saying things like, well, it was a mental illness. We saw that with the Danforth shooter, actually. He had mental illness all of a sudden when he did this. The other guy, I can't remember his name, the guy who drove a minivan in the streets of Toronto and killed a bunch of people, he was incel. He was mistreated by society. So they, instead of saying this was an Islamic terror done in the name of Allah, they're going to say this was a mental illness. This was somebody who didn't have a job. He was bored. He didn't know what to do. We didn't help him. Like society failed him at some point, and it was all our fault. So it's all our fault that these people are doing this, but it's not Islam's fault. This is part of Sharia, covering up the misdeeds done in the name of Islam so that you don't recognize it. They're giving precedence to Muslims over Christians and Jews when it comes to accepting immigrants. So we have an immigrant minister ourselves. So our minister of immigration is an immigrant. He was born in Somalia, and he is now allowing Muslims to come to Canada over Christians and Jews. And this is part of Sharia. So under Islamic law, you are to give the precedence to Muslims. Another example of this kind of situation would be where if you work in an Islamic company and you're a Christian, you would never get a job that would put you in a position of power over Muslims. So you would always hold like the menial jobs in the office, like picking up the garbage or cleaning the windows, so that a Muslim is always your boss. But you would never be like a director or an AVP or a VP, even a vice president, if you're Christian, if you're working in an Islamic organization. That is Sharia, that's Islamic law. So by allowing the immigrants to be Muslim over the Christian Muslims, that's the application of Sharia in action. So people who tell me Sharia is only applicable to Muslims, that is false information as well. It is applicable to everyone. The Muslims are mandated to bring Sharia everywhere they go. So it's not, when I say we're not supposed to bring, Islam to Canada, Sharia to Canada, that's a bunch of BS, because it is literally stated in their Quran that this is the marching orders for a Muslim. You are supposed to bring Sharia wherever you go. We have an Islamic party in Ontario. If that is not the application of Sharia in full-blown measure, I don't know what else would be. There's an Islamic party. Think about that, Canada. There's an Islamic party in Ontario. That is Islamic law. What do you think they're going to do if they get power? Do you think they're going to be respectful of Christians, or do you think it's going to turn the way of how Sharia is applied in other countries? So yeah, that's a very serious one. They are now infiltrating our police force, because what they're doing is they're sending radical imams to recruit in the mosque and bring these people into RCMP, bring these people into the police force. There's a reason for that, so that they can now have Muslims in the police force that can slowly take control. So if the government is infiltrated, then the police force is infiltrated, it becomes much easier to issue the orders once the Muslims are in bigger numbers. They're taking money from non-Muslims and giving it to Muslims. So under Islamic law is something called jizya. Now the jizya is a special poll tax you're supposed to pay as a non-Muslim living in a Muslim country. Now, because the Muslims are adaptable and they are looking for new ways to use our laws against us to benefit Islam, they have figured out that if they infiltrate a Western country that pays large welfare sums, they can take that welfare for them, slowly drain the economy that way by having more and more Muslims on welfare in that society, and eventually the economics were going to crash. And this is how they're going to bring about big numbers and bring about more Sharia into the country. So they are now doing that by bringing Muslims and putting them on welfare. So all of these illegal immigrants and all of these economic migrants that are coming here, that are kind of jumping the line in terms of immigration, they are being put on Canadian welfare, which means that me as a Canadian taxpayer, I pay for Muslims. It is a more sophisticated, more modern form of jizya. And we never would have seen this before, because there wasn't welfare states until about 100 years ago. It's so young, the welfare state is so young, that we haven't had a chance to correctly identify it yet. But I'm doing that today. I'm identifying for you that the jizya is really being mandated and taken from us via the welfare state. So pay attention to that one, guys. Now we allow for the Islamic garb to be worn at work. Finally, Quebec turned around and said no more. If you work for the government, which is a non-partisan, non-religious government, you cannot wear that. So kudos to Quebec on that one. But for the rest of us in Canada, we allow, and in the private sector as well, we allow for the Muslim garb to be worn. And in our society, even if you want to wear the full burqa where you can only see the eyes, this is a form of Sharia. This is an enforcement. This is a woman saying to us, I believe in Sharia over your laws, over the man-made laws of Canada. Every time you see a hijab, it is a translation. It is a non-verbal communication of Sharia. So when people say that Sharia affects only Muslims, they say, well, we're not forcing you to wear the hijab. Well, that's not yet. Because if Muslims were to come to be in greater numbers and to take power, one of the first things that they will do in Canada is say all women have to wear the hijab, regardless of if you're Muslim or not. Because Muslims want their men to not be tempted by you westernized women. So no more of that. You're going to all wear the hijab. And then again, much of the food that you eat is halal. So you don't even know it half the time. but a lot of the food you have is halal. I was at Costco the other day and I was buying naan bread, and the naan bread was halal, and I put it back because I don't want to pay anything halal. I don't want to buy anything halal. So, but yeah, it's everywhere. So to say that Sharia is not enforced on all of us, there's other companies that have entirely submitted to Sharia in terms of food production, and now everything they make is halal. I think, now don't quote me on this one, but I think Campbell's was one of them, if I'm not mistaken. They just went the full Sharia route and they've done everything halal. And now I eat halal food when I get something from Campbell's soup. So it's a form of Sharia. So all you Muslims out there who tell me Sharias are just for Muslims, I've just proven you all wrong. And see, this is because I understand Islam. I've actually read it, and I actually understand the history and how Muslim populations have taken over countries and how it works. I understand how it works. So Muslims, your Sharia is intended to be applied for everybody because Sharia is God's law and it's the only law that you believe in. So it's a lie when you tell me that Sharia is only for Muslims. So this whole article in here was clear propaganda. It served a few goals. I've touched a bit on it, but in closing this video today, I'm going to touch on those goals a bit more. The goal is to smear people. So smear Sandra Solomon before she even has a chance to be known. So if you didn't hear about her, but the first thing you read about her is about this CBC article, your view of her is already tainted. And I would encourage you, if you're one of those people who happened to come across this article before knowing Sandra, just go and watch some of her videos. She's not an extremist. She's not a deranged, crazed individual. She's an ex-Muslim who understands Islam, who speaks Arabic, and who is out there with a bunch of other ex-Muslims, all trying to warn us on what's happening in Canada. The other goal of this article is they want to lull you into compliance. They want to lull you back to sleep. So it's almost like go back to sleep, Canadians. There's no Sharia here. But I would argue that the very fact that we have to write an article, that the CBC had to write an article to say there is no Sharia, is alarming in itself, because it means now we have to deal with this here. We didn't have to deal with Islam before. There wasn't much of it here. The people who were here before, they weren't in our face about it, but now more and more it's coming out and it's being in our face. And this is why I have to make these videos, because everywhere I go, I see Islam. And I'm thinking, this is not an Islamic country. How is this happening? Well, it's happening via all of this. And while the CBC is telling you, go back to sleep, Canadians, there's no Sharia here, they're advancing Sharia. It's just that we don't know as Canadians what Sharia is. So I'm making these videos. Hopefully we learn a little bit more about Sharia. My dear friends in the US, our border might be the next problem you have, because with all of this being pushed up in Canada, Canada's not the end all be all for Islam. They really want to go after the big one, which is the USA. And if they have a stronghold in Canada, it'll be much easier for Islam to attack the United States. So it's happening right now, and people don't realize it. They just don't realize that by allowing this Sharia to take hold here and by not opposing it, we're going to lose our country, and we're going to pose a threat to the US. And the US is going to have a northern border, not a southern border. So anyways, guys, I've talked for a long time on this video. I hope you're still with me at the end here. I hope you learned a little bit about Sharia on this one and how to recognize it. Let me know if you know, again, that video from Sandra. I will listen to it, and I could potentially make a follow-up on this. And I will see everyone in the next one. Thanks for listening, guys.